Hello, everyone, all of our fellow rebels at home. Welcome to the Rebel News Daily live stream. I'm your co-host, Mary Ugolini, and I'm joined today by my beautiful correspondent in the province of British Columbia, Drea Humphrey. Hey, Drea, how you doing today?
I'm good, Tamara. Good to be back here with you and with everyone else. I'm sure it's going to be a good
It's
convo. So
it's always nice to have chats with you. I feel we're so busy all of the time doing work, and obviously being on separate ends of the country, we don't get to discuss and chat very much. But I always appreciate the insights you bring to the table. So thank you for joining me.
you too. All right. So what do we
So
have in store?
yeah, so in case everybody, if you're just joining us, you're not sure what we're doing here, this is, like I said, the daily live stream hosted by us here at Rebel News. Today, of course, is Thursday, July 28th, and it's basically just an hour-long segment where we're live and interactive with our viewers to discuss the newsiest news items of the day. So if you're joining us here on YouTube, which a large following of our platform is through the YouTube platform. But unfortunately, being that it's Drea and I will probably discuss some risque topics in terms of the COVID response and how it continues to be handled. So at that point, when we start to, question the science or critique certain things, unfortunately, having those thoughts goes against the Ministry of Truth at YouTube and their community standards. So we will have to, at that point, switch, and sometimes it's abrupt depending on what our editors think and if we're discussing things that they think are too hot for YouTube. So I always urge people to either have it set up and ready to go in the background or switch over right now to Rumble, Odyssey, or Getter. Rumble is a great platform. It's what we use a lot of the time just to host our videos, but also because you can engage with us directly there through what are called super chats. So it's a way for the viewer to give us a small monetary donation to, keep the lights on and keep our stories and our journalism afloat, and also have us read what you comment and what you say on air and engage with us. So if you send us a super chat through Rumble, then we will read that on screen and provide a comment or some commentary on whatever you have to say. So please don't be shy. Feel free to engage with us. We love hearing from our viewers. And of course, because we are completely viewer funded, it's our way to keep afloat with what you're thinking and your perspective as well, and stay on top of the news that you would like us to cover. So without further ado, we are going to be discussing, as it said in the title, the ArriveCAN app and the absolute disaster that has caused at our borders, various borders and airports. The jabs, which have been approved for babies and toddlers in Canada, and now in Ontario, at least, I'm not sure what it's like in BC, Drea, but you can officially make your appointment to have your baby vaccinated against COVID-19 and other certain wild things that we have never previously heard before, like the dangers of napping.
Yes. Oh, and this is going to be so good. I can't wait to get to that one. So, yeah.
Well, first and foremost, we want to keep the stuff that's kind of more YouTube safe. We want to run through that first so that we can, keep our viewers engaged on YouTube. Like I said, that's a very large platform for us. And that's why we're so careful on YouTube, because we don't want to risk being deplatformed from there completely. We have amassed a large following and we don't want to abandon YouTube, but unfortunately, they just keep going down that slippery slope of censorship. And so to be able to not censor ourselves, we kind of indirectly have to by switching over to another platform that doesn't engage in that sort of censorship. So let's talk about some of these things that are a little bit more YouTube friendly. Drea, do you want to kick it off with the ArriveCAN app and the chaos that's ensued?
Oh my goodness. So I'm just going to scroll down to find that one there. But in case you guys don't know, we've done a lot of coverage on the ArriveCAN app, and we even have a petition for you to sign at noarrivecan.com. But it looks like it's catching up to, of course, not just the vaccinated. It's also catching on to everybody. It says, if you look by this article by Windsor, it says ArriveCAN app non-compliance causing headaches for understaffed border officers. Shocker. The union representing border officers says the Canada Border Services Agency is facing several staffing shortages. I mean, we see this in every industry imaginable where they're using COVID policies. So if you scroll down a little bit, it says that the CBSA has had to implement mandatory overtime and canceled vacations to address the understaffed border crossings, according to Mark Weber, who is the Customs and Immigration Union president. He says, we have even got, sorry?
What a great way to have your summer, being an employee of this border service agency during the summer, that you have now mandated overtime and you can't take vacation, all because your very own government has decided to implement this surveillance tool, is what I equate it to be, onto everyone indiscriminately. Yeah, as you pointed out, Dre, it doesn't matter whether you're vaccinated or not. Everyone crossing the border coming into Canada has to download, so they're told, has to download this ArriveCAN app. And the people being forced to do the dirty work of the government to surveil everyone and their mother are missing out on summer vacation time and even just regular working hours. I mean, what complete disregard and respect for those people now that are, like I said, just doing the dirty work of the government.
And speaking of those people, True North did an article about an elderly woman in her 70s who is the perfect example about this not having anything to do with your vaccination status. She is fully vaccinated and took a day trip just for a couple of hours over to New York, I believe. Can we play a little clip? She is so sweet and so innocent. And she says something so true and heartbreaking, because they're saying, you know, download this app or else you'll be punished by having to quarantine and be tested. I mean, you know, what does a vaccination status matter if you have to do that solely based on the app? So we should show a clip. But she even says in there, which is really heartbreaking, she says, you know, I don't want to quarantine. I've been locked down for the past 2 years. And they're like, sorry, you know, my hands are tied here. But yeah, it looks like we have the article here. Here's this lovely woman. You know, if you remember the beginning of all of this, we were told that everything we were doing was for, you know, the elderly, right? But if you scroll down, or if you check out that article, you can even watch just a small clip of it. It's heartbreaking, but she's so sweet and so right. My goodness.
Are we able to show a clip? I don't know. I thought that it was quite powerful just because she's just a regular person like you and I. And like you said, an elderly woman who all of these protocols and policies are supposed to be protecting. And she's like, but I don't want to do it anymore, if ever.
I know. And here we go.
Compel you to perform ArriveCAN.
Look, she's so little.
I'm not going to sit here and try to strong arm you or convince you. Current policy, though, is that we are supposed to issue you a quarantine order at that point. So that's what I'm going to have to do then today. So,
but I'm vaccinated. Isn't that just for unvaccinated?
Well, it comes down to this is what I have to do as a screening officer. I don't have the ability to make that decision. I can put you in touch with public health. You can speak with one of them if you choose to. I also can't force you to do that.
Sorry, sir, I don't mean to interject, but you're saying that you're acting as a screening officer. So are you employed by the Public Health Agency of Canada?
No, I'm employed by the Canada Border Service Agency. CBSA Border Service officers are also classified as screening officers under the Quarantine Act.
Okay, so why is CBSA being forced to do PHAC's dirty work?
That's a question about my pay grade, sir. I don't know.
Fair,
right,
that's
so
fair.
In any case, though, I've had to put you into quarantine. So this is the information for that. That's your public health or your vaccination info, passport, and 2 test kits. So that's all that for you, and you're basically all set on our end.
So what if I don't do this? Because I've been 2.5 years and isolated for 2 years. I'm not going to isolate again.
Okay.
So
I can certainly appreciate the frustration over the pandemic. Once again, that's a public health issue, not a CBSA issue. So we have zero follow-up or enforcement on our end. It goes to public health, and they have an enforcement compliance division where they handle all that stuff, which they do whatever it is that they do. I don't talk to them. I don't work with them. It's all done electronically through the ArriveCAN app or whatever. So.
How are you feeling? You okay there, Joe?
I'm getting upset.
Oh, she's so cute.
This is insane.
It is insane.
You shouldn't have to go through this. No Canadian should. Just because I don't want to put an app on my phone. It's insane.
This is
What a
why
mess.
mobility rights matter, people. Doesn't matter your medical choices. You have to stand for your rights, including mobility rights, because where is the science in that? What happened to that lady?
Well, exactly. And what a mess of the bureaucracy. I mean, he even says there it's above his pay scale. I mean, fair enough. However, they are doing public health's dirty work. And then there's no communication, though, between the Public Health Agency of Canada and the Canadian Border Services Agency. So where's the cohesive science-based approach, right? If it was all about trusting the science, then everybody would be on the same page, you would think, because we're not allowed to question the science. So I also want to point out as well in that CTV News Windsor article, I don't know if we can pull it back up again, but they say that approximately 30% of border crossers haven't completed the app. I mean, that's a pretty great number in my opinion. Obviously, there's a lot of room there for there to be more non-compliance, but that's a pretty high number, 30%. So that's contributing to the lag and the holdup, prolonging traveler processing times amid an already chaotic travel season. Yeah, thanks again, government. And then it goes down as well, says Weber, so that's the union president, says searches for illegal drugs, firearms, and in-depth interviews have taken a back seat since much of the focus is on the ArriveCAN app. If we want to talk about health and safety, it's all ArriveCAN or nothing. Apparently none of this other stuff, firearms and illegal drugs, hey, that's what, that doesn't matter anymore, because we have to make sure that everyone downloads a tracking app onto their cell phone for the same health and safety reasons why we would not want firearms and illegal drugs.
And it's eerily similar to during the lockdown, where we had our law enforcement being called to, Chapters bookstores because an autistic child can't put a mask on. Is there nothing more important for you guys to be doing? It's the same thing being repeated over and over in different ways.
Absolutely. And this particular woman, that video there. So I think that if I remember that story correctly, because that's just a few days ago now that went viral on Twitter and was picked up by True North. She's crossing the New York border there with Niagara Falls. And so that's a land border crossing. So we see the chaos that's happening in Pearson Airport and Montreal Airport and various airports all across Canada, the main hubs of travel. But we didn't hear much previously about what's happening at the land border crossing. No. So that woman was taking a day trip into New York. And then we also have the clip now of the Niagara Falls, or the Niagara mayor. He's having a conversation with the Niagara MP, Dean Allison, if I remember him correctly. Yes, Dean Allison. And he's denouncing all this border, this app as being essentially destroying the economy there. So maybe we can just show a quick clip as well of what this mayor had to say about the ArriveCAN app. And again, he's in the hub where that land border crossing, a main artery between Canada and the United States, is happening.
And app requirement at the border. It's absolutely bananas why we're doing this. And, and we've asked in the National Chambers of Commerce and Duty Frees and the hospitality industry, Hotel Association, cross-border mayors, we're all asking the same questions. Why are you doing this? We know why we had it in the beginning, and we agreed. We had to keep COVID out of the country. Well, clearly it's here, and we always said follow the science. Well, the experts like Zane Chagla at McMaster University are saying it serves no purpose other than to kill tourism. It literally is choking it. And I'll give you a typical example, Dean. Someone shows up at the border with their family in their minivan from Pennsylvania. Well, they don't keep an eye on Ottawa to see what's happening in Canada. They've got their passports. They get there and they realize they can't get in with their passports. And so they're not sure what to do because they don't have roaming. They can't access Wi-Fi. There's a lineup behind them. They're told there could be quarantining issue, fine issues, random testing issues. And the message is they tell their friends, stay away from Canada. It's a mess. They don't know what they're doing. And CBSA agree with us. The numbers they're quoting us for compliance are absolutely ridiculous. It's very low. Most Americans have opted not to come because of it, because it's easier not to. So just like in business, and Dean, yourself as well, I understand customer service. I always go to my customer and I find out what they need and I try to fill the need. I don't shove something down their throat. That's not how you work, or you'll be out of business. So what are we doing? We're forcing this down their throat. And I can tell you, I've spoken with a number of federal ministers, and they're all saying our suggestions are fair. And one other part, if I could just throw in there, Dean, the other frustration is people who live here, specifically senior citizens. And I get a lot of calls, a lot of emails. I get contacted regularly. And the people are so offended and they feel discriminated against. They say, I'll show my passport. I haven't got vaccinated. But why do I have to have digital technology? I don't have a smartphone, or I have a flip phone. And that kind of stuff is maddening to local seniors who have paid their dues.
And you mentioned.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, the shock and horror of being discriminated against by a COVID rule. I mean, it reminds me, talking about the land border, of the couple I interviewed, a retired couple who lives part-time in Bellingham and then likes to spend the summers in their summer home out here in BC in Penticton, fined $25,000 for not doing the ArriveCAN app, and probably, I assume, not testing as well. We've covered that story, and it also happens to be that the Leaves are one of the newest clients taken on by our charity partners at the Democracy Fund, who do amazing work helping, everyday law-abiding citizens, just like the Leaves here, fight tyrannical fines. And so, in case you guys are new to Rebel News, that's something that we're really passionate about helping and collaborating with them on. And it's only possible by donations that go to fightvaccinepassports.com. That's our special website to help fund many legal cases for Canadians like the Leaves. Whether even back in the day, remember the quarantine hotels? There was a lot of situations with that. And so we helped people fight those types of fines too. Again, fightvaccinepassports.com. But it's madness. But I always say the bright side of all of this is that people are asking questions, like that gentleman just said. All of us are asking why. Well, thank God for that 2 years later. That's exactly what we needed to happen a long time ago.
And still not getting answers from the bureaucracy, right? That's the issue here, is that people, they implement these things like the ArriveCAN app. They don't think about all the nuances involved in it. Just as the mayor said in that clip, that, the family full of kids coming over in a minivan where they don't have roaming, they don't have data, they have no idea that they need this app to get into the country, and there's a lineup behind them. I mean, at that point, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. What are you going to do? And the bureaucracy obviously doesn't think about these nuances, because they don't have a minivan full of children. They're flying up in their private jets or on chartered business class. So they don't think about these things on the ground that are happening to everyday people just trying to live their lives and reinstitute their pre-pandemic way of life. I mean, like I said, that's a main artery there for people, for tourism, and also there's families and people that visit. And so all those nuances get lost in the bureaucracy that is so out of touch, and only increasingly seemingly out of touch. And it's going to take a lot of people rallying like that, asking those questions, to have this finally terminated. And also, in addition to the Fight Vaccine Passports campaign, I also want to highlight that we started a new fundraising effort and petition at noarrivecan.com. So that is specific to the ArriveCAN app and people who are facing fines and repercussions for refusing to comply with this government surveillance tool. And I also want to point out too that we've had a few reports on that subject since we launched the campaign, but in my original report on the No ArriveCAN app website, we mentioned in there the day that the Rogers network went down. So that was, I guess, 2 weeks, roughly 2 weeks ago now. So across Canada, one of our main telecommunications providers went down all across the nation. And some of the federal government actually operated their networks through the Rogers network, and the ArriveCAN app was one of those items that was directly affected by the outage. And so there was just absolute chaos because no one's ArriveCAN app worked for pretty much a full 24 hours. So it just highlights how absolutely ridiculous something like this is to implement, and the dangers of having and relying so heavily on technology, because when it goes down, this is the fallout that ensues. I mean, it was absolute chaos for people trying to get through the border and not having any cell service or their app not even working.
Yeah, oh, so much. We can go on forever, but yeah, please do check out noarrivecan.com. I think this is a good moment to jump to one of our ads here. Let's take a look at what we have here. For those of you who don't know, we are viewer funded, and sometimes we have sponsors as well, which help bring you guys reports that you can trust on the other side of the story.
Now, I missed the last few seconds of that video, but there's so many new designs in the Rebel News store as well. There's those really cute trucker resist, I think in resistance t-shirts, what they say. And then the stop or eat the beef, whatever, that campaign that was very successful because the government backpedaled so quickly on trying to put warning labels on beef. And I think there's some really cute designs. Yeah, the Justin Castro ones.
Hover on the Justin Castro for a second. I still have to get mine, but that's my favorite. It's my favorite. I mean, look at that. It's uncanny. My goodness. But yeah, check that out. And I believe we have a code on for the summer as well. So all the types of shirts you're looking here, the unisex shirts, if you use coupon code SUMMER when you order, you get a second one free. Isn't that right?
So it's buy two and get a third free.
Buy two, get a third free.
And there's so many new designs. You could easily pick 3 really solid shirts to wear this summer and show off
other people in the family too.
Yeah, I mean, this would make a great gift for a really radical lefty who who might need a push in the direction of, hey, look how similar Justin Trudeau and Fidel Castro look in real life.
Oh gosh, yeah, you got to see it side by side like that.
We have one super chat from Adam Ottawa. He gives $1. Thank you, Adam. National Post reported today on a group of Israeli youth who got redirected for testing. So 15 of 33 were randomly selected. As a result, they're missing their trip to Wonderland trying to chase tests. Yeah, there's a classic example of how tourism and this industry that has already been put under such intense pressure due to COVID restrictions is further being damaged by the COVID restrictions. It's just a snowball effect that this government has. And my goodness, let's just get government out of the way once and for all. I mean,
what do you mean by that,
Tamara?
Careful now.
Well, just remove all this red tape and really think, I don't know, that government's always saying, oh, we're engaging with the stakeholders and the stakeholders. Well, what about the taxpayers? Aren't we the largest stakeholder? Maybe someone should finally consult with us, the actual stakeholders, people on the ground who have to deal with this madness and chaos, and determine whether or not some of these implementations are actually wise decisions. Because as it turns out, millions are thrown at these, billions even are thrown at these idiotic responses. And they end up being scrapped because they literally makes no sense.
And who's going to be to blame for all of this? Who's going to take the fall? Who's going to be the scapegoat? Once people realize all of this is falling apart, somebody has to answer. The people who did the bidding for the government are going to have to face the music. I have a report coming out on BC ferries. Recently, they've canceled travel on Sundays due to short staffing. And on the vaccine, they recently hired some of their unvaccinated workers back, but they fired their CEO due to decisions around short staffing. So it's like, what's going on here? Was one of those decisions to can or lay off without pay for months what I believe is close to 150 unvaccinated workers. I'm waiting to see if they'll respond on that. But I mean, again, every industry, and I think some of these people at the top that have just been blindly following or following against their better judgment are going to have some consequences, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so too. And we see it across, as you've mentioned already before, we've seen it across all sectors that there seems to be these shortages. And yet simultaneously, there's the people who have been terminated due to mandates. And it even started with the masking. Arguably, so many people couldn't tolerate 8 hours a day being masked for prolonged periods of time that they were off on stress leave and other things even pre the injection rollout in Canada, and depending on which province you're in and what the timeline was on that. So these mandates and restrictions have been causing harm to the employment sector for the better part of 2 years now, and it started even before the vaccine passports came into effect. We do have 2 more super chats by the same guy. So Phrase Bo. So I think that's Fraser in Hamilton. Thank you for your $5 donation and another $1 donation. I'll just read them together. But it says, do you think any of the CPC candidates would support this and the sale of cell phone data to private users, and police with a fine of $1,000 to be paid to the victim of this crime? The government has no right to spy on us. All mandates should be canceled. When? Now. Well, that seems like an interesting perspective. I'm not sure if any of the CPC candidates would support this. Maybe it's worth asking any of them. But definitely, this scooping of cell phone data without the knowledge of the user, that is very questionable. And the Public Health Agency of Canada has been doing that all throughout the COVID narrative. They were working with TELUS. Sheila Gunn-Reid has reported heavily on this and has filed various access to information requests to find out more about what unfolded there. But they wanted to know who was complying with, the stay-at-home orders, where they were going, how long they were spending away from home, all of these things. So I definitely see this as being a slippery slope. And the ArriveCAN app and its tracking and surveillance of you is just further reinforces how much of a slippery slope this is. And unless people don't comply with it, then they're going to continue to get away with it. And personally, again, I think this paves the way for that KTDI, the known traveler digital identity. Yeah. That's the WEF's, the World Economic Forum's brainchild in partnership with the Government of Canada, Pearson International Airport, the Trudeau International Airport in Montreal, and other stakeholders like some weird AI companies. And so they want to institute a tracking and tracing. There it is, unlocking the potential of digital identity for secure and seamless travel. So it's all about safety and convenience. I've actually interviewed a few months back a gentleman from Free to Fly Canada, so a former pilot who's unfortunately been put on unpaid leave. I don't think he's been formally terminated due to his non-compliance with the vaccine mandate. And he reiterates in that interview, it's all about safety and convenience, but at the expense of having literally every ounce of your being and all of your data trackable and traceable. And what are the potential repercussions of something like that? I mean, we know that could pave the way to social credit scores and then your green credits and how much carbon you use this month or this year. So I'm really concerned about the direction that something like this, the ArriveCAN app and the known traveler digital identity, will take moving forward in the future if people continue to comply with it.
Right. Well, they say he who owns the data owns the world, essentially, or controls the world. So imagine the power. If you can get everybody to put their data in one area, what can you do with that information? And, you have to think of the boiling frog analogy, how slow we've been conditioned to get to this point, what it started with first, or, predominantly just disclose your vaccination status. No big deal, just to keep your job, everybody's having to do that. And then, it's just one step ever. You surrender those privacy rights, and then it just pushes and pushes and pushes. And now vaccinated 70-year-old women get punished and forced into confinement, or solitary confinement, basically at home after 2 years of doing the same, because they don't comply.
Right. Well, and I also want to start to get into some of this more nitty-gritty COVID related stuff. And so I want to remind anyone who's just tuning in, with us that if we cut from YouTube, it's because what we're talking about and some of our views and opinions and criticism of the COVID response, and namely the injections, may not align with YouTube's community standards. Unfortunately, we have to kind of semi-censor ourselves in order to stay afloat on the YouTube platform. But if you go over and join us on Rumble, Odyssey, or Getter, on those platforms, we can speak more freely and voice our more in-depth opinions. If you appreciate listening to our commentary here on YouTube, then I may urge you to move over to one of those platforms either now or when you see us get cut off. That is why we start to get into some more risky discussions there. And also, I want to remind everyone on Rumble, you can engage directly with us by giving a super chat. So if you donate a small monetary donation, then we'll read your comment on screen and you can engage with us directly. It's a great way for us to stay afloat and for you to give us your feedback in real time. So that being said, let's touch on this CNN article from earlier this week. Napping regularly linked to high blood pressure and stroke, a study finds. I'm really surprised it's not related to climate change, to be honest.
Well, you know, first of all, I love how it's like a study finds. But, you know, I thought climate change was the craziest one to see on this, but I almost think that this is more. I mean, come on now. And the fact that these are coming out around the same time is very interesting as well. So,
yeah, it's like anything other than the miracle novel injections is to blame for all of our ailing health.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, do we tell the toddlers that their naps could mean that they will have high blood pressure?
Yeah, the younger you are, right? I mean, it does say, if you go into the article, it does say, well, here's the thing. Most people are reading headlines. They know that there's been studies about that. I think it's around 70% will just read the headline before they even share it with others. So when you look at a chunk like that, the headline makes a huge impact. The article, of course, does explain, if you go down into it, that people who, and I'm in the wrong article, but basically people who are napping are also more likely to have other issues making them more tired, like they're not sleeping through the night and that makes them more tired. So there is an explanation for this and that makes perfect sense. But for the 70% that just read it, go, oh my gosh, you know, maybe I've been napping too much. That's why I have myocarditis. I can never say that word. You know what I mean?
Myocarditis, yeah. It says here, if the person was younger than age 60, napping most days raised the risk of developing high blood pressure by 20% compared with people who never or rarely nap, according to the study published in Hypertension, an American Heart Association journal. I mean, I've had babies and I used to nap, you know, they say sleep when baby sleeps. I mean, as impossible as usually that is. Like I've done my fair share of napping over the last, well, probably since ever. I've always been a huge fan of sleep. But I can say that I have very
I don't like it so much.
Blood pressure. I just can't even believe that these are the headlines we're seeing now, because we have things like all-cause mortality skyrocketing through the roof, higher, up in some cases up like 30 to 40% higher than previous years, 2019 and before. And it could maybe be because you're taking too many naps.
And are people going to start fearing naps now? Like, are they going to like fighting to stay awake if they're tired? You know what I mean? And you talk about pregnancy, obviously that's an example of, you know, having some more pressures on your body and needing to nap. But sometimes I'm tired and I will pull over and have a 20-minute nap so that I'm not driving home in an unsafe fashion. So
I feel like that would contribute.
Let me know if you do that too. But my point is like, oh no, I better not nap. I might die. Meanwhile, you fall asleep on the road. Like,
yeah. And being stressed and straining to try to stay awake, that probably contributes to higher blood pressure. I'm not a doctor, but
of course,
yeah,
CNN's
this is so
all
questionable.
over it too.
Yeah, and the people, the true believers of CNN will be like, oh, shock and horror. We've been napping this whole time.
Oh my gosh. It's just, yeah. Like, what do you think is more bizarre, the climate change one or this one?
You know, like I said at the onset, I'm just shocked that they didn't conflate this with climate change, you know, that
Yeah.
napping and the climate crisis, somehow you emit more CO2 when you're napping, and that's contributing to the global warming and the climate crisis. I'm just shocked that they didn't try to spin it that way.
You're right.
But
What
this
a
is
wasted opportunity. You know?
Oh no, don't give them any ideas.
All right.
This is almost as bad as, what else did they say in the headlines recently? Not napping, but the heat, right? Heat was more likely to contribute to clotting, I believe it was. I don't know if we can pull that up. I think it was last week or the week prior. And I'm like, how did all of those populations live along the equator all these years? My goodness.
Mm-hmm. Well, in BC, more people died from the heat wave than they did for COVID, you know, during the really bad heat wave last year. I mean, that's separate than the blood clotting, but it's interesting. You probably won't be able to find the chart because I can't remember where I saw it. But when you look at our all-cause deaths in this province, you know, we had about 4 or 5 years in the last 12 years where we had more deaths than 2020 and 2021. But I think 2021, we matched some of them, and they put due to COVID-19 and, you know, the heat wave. They had to couple it together, you know.
Right. To just mislead that little bit more. The other article that we have here that you've been following the legal beat a lot more closely than I have, but the Children's Health Defense, which I really appreciate their reporting. I like following their stuff when I'm able to. Yeah. I'm always enlightened by their articles. So they put out this article about a historic decision from the courts in Italy. Maybe you can elaborate on this one, Drea.
Well, first off, I don't know about you guys, but anytime we can share good news, it's very good. So this is awesome. It's a historic decision. It relates to people being laid off without pay or terminated for not being vaccinated. And so this came out of the courts in Italy. And so basically on July 6th, the Court of Florence has approved a sentence annulling the measure taken by the Order of Psychologists of Tuscany against one of its members. The reason being the suspension of exercise of the profession risks compromising primary individual rights, such as the right to a livelihood and the right to work. Yes, no shocker there. And also it goes on in here saying basically that there is